Hello, my name is Tom Wilson, and I am the supply clergy at St. Andrew's by the Sea in Nags Head. And we're closed down right now. The bishop has asked us to suspend services for a couple of weeks. It'll probably go on longer than that. Um, as I'm recording this, the police are stopping people who don't live on the Outer Banks and trying to keep us from having cases of COVID-19 virus. Um, Chances are it's probably already here. So we're in a situation right now where we're trying to play it safe, um, but we're trying to see what will happen with us. So keep us in your prayers as we keep you in our prayers. Um, Last week, I had planned that we would have a different person giving the sermon. This is Cara Ellen Modisette, who is a seminarian at Virginia Seminary, and she was going to be with us. She comes down to the Outer Banks on a regular basis, and was a church musician in a lot of churches, in several churches in Virginia. And she would come down here, play the piano, keep up with her art, and come and have services. And I enjoyed talking to her, and I thought the church would enjoy listening to her and about her sense of call and why she was going to seminary. Um, but what happened was that she got exposed to somebody who got exposed to somebody who had contact with COVID, someone who had the COVID-19 virus. And so she's now in self-quarantine at seminary in Virginia. The Episcopal Diocese of Washington had closed all their services as well, and this diocese, the Diocese of East Carolina, closed. The bishop urged us to close our churches, and the governor has kept us from having meetings of more than 25 people. We've tried to figure out how to live with this. The week before we were closed, we were trying to figure out how we could exchange the peace in a better way that didn't involve a lot of handshaking, hugging, and all that sort of thing. And so we tried something, the idea of waving at people, doing the namaste, or hitting elbows or whatever, and to try and just to keep our social distance, as they say. And you should have seen it. We were clumsy as all get out. We laughed because we felt foolish, and it just didn't quite work for us. And then now we were going to try a different way of communion, and now we won't be able to have a communion for a while. We'll see how that goes. But this silliness that we had reminded me of being in the fourth grade in upstate New York where we moved up there, where I first learned how to ice skate. I felt foolish and looked silly as after more than a few falls and tears, and finally I was able to get it, and then we played. I was able to play ice hockey in the ice over flooded cove close to our house, and to find a real sense of peace skating up the river for miles. Cara, in her note, wrote me that the title of her homily that she was writing before she got news of her need for self-quarantine was to be Cartwheels in Compline, about a situation that while she was trying to be extra holy while doing Compline one evening, she with a group of people in a small room, she looked around and there was this woman, young person, actually she was 40 years old, doing cartwheels in that room. And when I looked at that, I thought, I think I know where she's trying to go. It's the tension of living in a broken world and trying to hold on to hope. Aristotle had this theory about the difference between comedy and tragedy. In tragedy, you have a hero, a leader, a man respected, who in his pride, hubris, leads him to making wrong decisions, which cause for um, huge tragedy for everybody. And the audience that sees it is fearful, and they cry. A comedy, on the other hand, is about just dog-faced people like you and me who just try to do the best we can, and we have all these obstacles ahead of us, and we keep trying, and we finally succeed. And when the audience sees that, they feel hope, and they laugh, and they find that foolishness. When the Hebrew children, in the first lesson, which is from the book of Exodus, where uh, Moses is going with the Hebrew children through Sinai, and they're incredibly thirsty. They've been used to having water at the Nile all the time, but now they're incredibly thirsty. For a few days, they put up with it. Well, they think, oh, well, this is temporary, but it keeps on going. And so they finally get frustrated and angry. And they're wondering, is God here with us or not? And they wonder about that. And Moses finally is able to strike a rock. And out of the rock, the water flows. And there flows over them from the rock, and hope returns, flowing like a river. More water than they will ever need. And they get the answer that God is there, here in the space between them. Secondly, the gospel lesson for today is the Samaritan woman at the well. It's from John's gospel. And she's alone out in the heat of the noonday sun getting water. The old Noel Coward song goes, only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the noonday sun. She has a strained relationship with her fellow inhabitants of the town. And she probably spent the first couple of weeks going out in the noonday sun with a feeling silly and clumsy about how our world had turned upside down. She was defensive and angry in the process of wondering if there was even ever a return to normal. Is there a God that forgives and redeems all things? Or is it God who's only interested in staying safe up in heaven, away from messy human beings? Then this Jewish stranger, Jesus, shows up at this Samaritan town. And he asks her for a favor. Jews and Samaritans hated each other, and she was thinking, how dare he, a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan, because he looks down at Samaritans and half-breeds. And how could he ask me for anything? And she starts to tell him off. But he doesn't get offended because he knows what she's going through. He understands that what she's going through means that she's not really after water. She's after a sense of peace, a deeper sense of peace. So he uses the metaphor of a spring of water bubbling up into her life instead of the well of which she must go down alone in humiliation. And she longs for that peace. In the conversation, he uncovers her shame, and in response, she reacts in anger, going to the choice that many of us go, picking a fight about religion. But Jesus does not rise to the bait and continues to offer peace. And then in this comedy, she realizes that God is in the space between them. In the middle of things falling apart, she finds hope. Together, we're going through some rough times ahead. There will be times we'll wonder whether God is with us or not, to which we proclaim every day, sometimes looking silly or clumsy or haphazardly. But if we believe God is with us, God is here in the space between us, like a river of grace washing over us. When I try to figure out what I'm going to say in a homily, I write a poem first. And so this is what the poem was. It's called Cara's Note. Reading the message, muttering rats and sighing, something like a horrid cry, is God with us or not? After all, I had my own plans, wanting control of plot. Here, I am a hero, succeeding as if without trying. Yet, I had to stop and was granted a moment to pray for healing of my friend and of the world we live in, full of plague, division, greed, and other kinds of sin, reminding us life's a journey, not a safe place to stay. She was calling her talk Cartwheels at Compline, holding a holy, living tension between joy and sorrow in the space between the night and the dawn of a morrow. Or at least is what I imagined, coloring outside a line. We'll now have to wait to hear what she wants to say, trusting that the love we sent is shared as we pray. Be careful as you go around. Wash your hands. Keep social distance from each other. But hold on to prayer with each other so that the spiritual distance will be very, very small, because God is with us in the space between us. God bless.